Hey guys, Xeku again. This time with a review of the Aura 44 scale high-grade dual century Xeku Eins, Type 3 equipment type from the Gundam Sentinel series. So for color scheme we mainly get a dark blue, but unfortunately, even though this is a new design's mobile suit, it's not quite Titan's blue. And that would have made this thing even more badass than it already is. But let's move on with the other colors. We get a very light gray. You might think it's more on the white side because of the darker blue, but it is gray. Then we also get darker gray for the joints, the hands, the hoses, these little pegs here, and a few other parts. Also, all the thrusters are molded in the very light gray. Then we also have some red for the cockpit, little details here, and also when we look at the back, we also have some more little details molded in the light gray, which is very nice looking. Then finally we also get yellow for the vents here. Moving on with the stickers, we don't actually get that many of them. We have one for the mono eye and for, well, so we have one for the mono eye and then one for the bottom here as well. And for some reason, they decided to give us a spare, but this is not actually cut out. It's actually still on the thing, so if you accidentally ruin this sticker, you can still cut this one out if you want to. So yeah, then we also have black ones for inside of the vents, and finally we have a pink one for the sensor on the backpack. Then articulation, head goes bit up, bit down, rotates about that far until it hits the shoulder. Shoulders go all the way around, and the arm goes up about that far. The flap here doesn't really allow for that much more movement, but when we look at the arm without the extra armor on it, it's not just the flap that hinders it, it's actually just because of the design of the arm itself, and the flap actually moves out plenty enough. So it also rotates around, bends at the elbow for about 90 degrees, I think 90 degrees exactly, and then hands on ball joint, will wiggle around, turn around, and do everything a ball joint does. And then the trigger finger here is actually movable, just as the Rick Diaz's and Shuzram Diaz. Then rotates around at the waist about that far until the hoses hit the front skirt here, so you can push it up a bit and it will rotate around all the way. Putting this back on here. And the one thing that was the most surprising about this model kit, the front skirts are molded separately. It's not just that you can separate them, they're actually molded separately. And even in older master grade like style, they're on ball joints, so they will go forwards, backwards, wiggle around a bit, and most importantly, go up and down. And the legs go forward about that far, backwards until they hit the back skirt, and out about that far. Then the knees are, well, they're technically double jointed, but you're not gonna get a whole lot of movement out of them because of the design. And when you look at this, they couldn't have bent that much further anyway, so that is really about all you could have possibly gotten out of it. Feet go forwards, backwards, side to side a bit, and rotate around all the way. And of course, articulation wasn't really the big thing of this model kit, so let's immediately get on with the accessories. Starting off with, well, two accessories that are a bit funky, and not just because, well, they're beam toothpicks. We all hate them, but it's an older model kit. Fine. The one funny thing about this, well, the one slightly annoying thing about this is, even though we get two beam sabers, we only get one hand capable of holding it. And you want to know what's even better? We only get a right hand that's capable of holding it. So yeah, at the very least, we can say that it holds on to it pretty damn good, which is not something that can be said for all of the older holding hands. So yeah, that is something, but unfortunately, the right hand is the hand you're going to use this thing in. Yeah, take a wild guess which one is going to be used. So let's quickly put these horrible toothpicks away, never to be looked at again, and get this thing here. One cool thing is soft rubber belt here, which will go in the back of those huge ammo canisters. And what you're actually supposed to do is the trigger finger is supposed to go inside of the trigger guard here, but I've noticed that it's actually easier to pose the gun. Oh, come on, get in there. So that it's actually easier to pose the gun when you put the trigger finger over the trigger guard for some reason or another. And you can simply slide this thing in here. There we go. And then of course, this left hand here is used for holding the gun with both hands. And that is not something that is easily done because of course, well, it's an older model kit and articulation is a bit limited. It can be done, but I only managed to do it while the trigger finger was over the guard, was over the trigger guard. And then you kind of get something like this. You can do it a bit better if you're going to fiddle with it a bit more, but it really does require a bit of fiddling around. There we go. And this is about the best you're going to be able to get it. And that is with the trigger finger down here, because as you can see, the trigger finger isn't anywhere near the trigger guard right now. And then let's just put this thing back in here. Of course, we don't just get one of those shoulder attachments, we get two of them. And there are two reasons why I decided not to attach this one immediately. The first one is I wanted to show that this is actually very nicely removable. As you can see, the shoulder just here has the one attachment point, which was something I was kind of worried about with this thing mounted on it, but this thing actually connects to the shield itself and not to the shoulder. And when you remove this, you can see that, well, you just have a hole here. So when you just have it like this, you can easily make it seem like one of the canisters is used and thrown away. So that's a cool feature it's got going on. The one difference between this shoulder pack, well, between the shield and that shield, is that this one has the beam sabers on them. Unfortunately, they are a different color from, you know, the regular beam sabers. Not sure why they didn't just mold them in the same color, but hey. Also, these can be put on there because they have the same attachment point. So if you buy two of these, you can give him 4 beam sabers. Now, these ammo packs, well, these two ammo packs are exactly the same. So unfortunately, here, the part where the belt goes will be on the front. And there's also a second reason, because as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the Type 3 equipment set. Unfortunately, they never released the Type 1 or the Type 2. But since this is so easily removable, you can in fact make a relatively easy Type 1 set. Starting off with the back, I've been trying to look up what the Type 1 is exactly, because that was apparently the most basic setup. And it seems like when you look at the pictures from the back, it shows that the backpack should be removed, including the giant ass back thruster here. So they show that all of this should be removed, and in fact, this is exactly how it looks, even though I don't really think you should remove it, whatever. And then what you have to do is put fuel tanks on there, and you can use either, well, this is from the 144 scale Zeta plus C1, but I would recommend using the 100 scale Zeta plus C1's fuel tanks. Then you can simply put them on here, you know, do a little bit of kit bashing with that to make sure that you get a peg that fits in there, and then you will have some very nice fuel tanks, because this one here, the 144 scale, doesn't seem to be quite long enough. Also, the peg doesn't really fit, but whatever. So if you use a 100 scale, all you have to do then is get a beam rifle that kind of looks like the Type 1, and you're set. Unfortunately, the Type 2 is going to be much more difficult to recreate, since you will need, you know, that beam smart gun and radome on the shoulder, so that's going to be a bit more difficult. But hey, if you're willing to do a bit of modifying, you can have some fun with this thing. Talking about things that weren't included, this thing, in fact, isn't even a complete Type 3, because unfortunately, as you can see here, there are 2 nice holes on there. Obviously, those holes are for extra equipment, which we do not get. The reason for these holes are smoke dischargers, ammo packs for the clay bazooka, just extra ammo in general, and they aren't used on this set. Now you might think, well, maybe it's for the other unit types, but no. Unit 3's picture is shown with ammo packs being on here. And, well, they could either be the smoke dischargers or the ammo packs for the clay bazooka. Another thing this thing doesn't come with is the commander antenna. Yet another thing the Type 3 is shown with. What we do get is a spare sensor thing that goes on here. Now, I really don't get why they gave us 2 of those sensor things. You know, it might have been a good idea to make this part here so that it could take a commander antenna. You know, if you're going to give us the spare one, you might as well give us a spare one with a commander antenna. You know, that's just a bit unfortunate. As always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? And well, I feel like the conclusion is kind of like a mix between the HGUC and the Xeku 3's conclusion. First up, just like the Xeku 3, it's big, bulky, awesome, and the articulation is a bit on the, well, lower side. Other than the front scuds, which are absolutely fantastic and are just like monster grade front scuds. But just like the Xeku 3, the bulk and awesomeness definitely makes up for the lack of articulation here. And then just like the HGUC, while the base model and what we're getting is pretty good, we could have done with a bit more. Especially a commander antenna here for the Xeku Eins. And, you know, maybe give us something for those obvious hard points which are not being used right now. And which should have been used. So, in that aspect, well, for 1,600 yen, like I said, just as with the HGUC, you're getting a nice model, which is big, bad, and bulky, but feels maybe a bit incomplete. And 1,600 yen is definitely a big price to pay when you think that the Xeku 3, for example, is 1,500 yen, including the Mashimar Cello version. Now, if you like the Xeku Eins, you're definitely going to love this, and this set is going to be awesome. If you want bulky kits, this is definitely going to ride up your alley. But for 1,600 yen, you can find better deals out there. Also, one thing that did annoy me is that the left holding hand simply cannot really grab onto the machine gun properly. It always feels like the machine gun is slightly off, unless you're going to put it like this, like very sideways, then you can kind of get the hand on there. But other than that, by the time the hand starts to grab onto it, it feels like the hand's just going to pop off. And this is probably the best I've got it in like all the time I've been trying to pose it. So it's definitely going to look a bit off. Also, just like the Xeku 3, you can put this thing as a beam bayonet. Anyways, overall, it's a very nice thing. Could have done with a few more accessories, or I could have released the other types. And I'm really hoping that maybe at some point in the future we will see the Type 1 and especially the Type 2 with the very awesome Beam Smart Gun. But until that time, we can only hope. Moving on with some more size comparisons. As I've already shown, it's a very big and bulky thing. So let's put it next to the standard Gym Custom here. And you can definitely see where the price came from. Much more bulky, also slightly bigger than the standard machine, though not quite as big as the Xeku 3. Next up, here he is next to the Marasai. And see what I did there? Make it happen, Bandai, in Hyper Universal Century. And then finally, let's once again put him next to his Titan buddies, my own Gym Quill 2, and the real great Gundam Mark II. Well, that's all for this review, and see you guys next time.